Tua to the Saints, the blockbuster trade that could change everything, ladies and gentlemen, the backdrop after further review. Wow. All right, so some people sent me this, and I couldn't believe it. I could not believe what I was seeing, and we're going to listen to the Sconemeister, Matt Moscona, tell us why this is a thing. I will say it's impressive. They took the worst parts of Derek Carr, which was the contract, and the worst parts of Tyler Shough, which is the injury history, somehow combined them together, put some tattoos on it, and you get Tua. So I cannot find a single reason why the Saints should do this or would do this. This is a horrific idea. This makes no sense at all, which we'll talk about, I'm sure, throughout this video. So without further ado, hey, actually, before we even start, quick nugget. So I've been doing my research, some analytical stuff, getting ready for the season. This was from James Foster on his Wide Left .football Substack. Real quick, he charted 2,797 quarterback pressures from 2023 and 2024 to determine the most diverse skill set amongst pass rushers. Where do you think Chase Young is on this list as far as like pressure rate with a move, showing how diverse the move set is? Where do you think he would rank? Where would you hope he would rank? Right? Remember when he got paid this offseason, a lot of people were like, well, it doesn't make sense. I hate the deal. Chase Young sucks. And we were sitting here and we were like, well, actually, Chase Young was pretty good last year. And I think Chase Young's got some stuff in his locker. So where do you think he fits? What if I told you 6th? Interesting. What do you think about that? Chase Young, 8th. What do you think about that? Comes in at number 8. Interesting. 2 spots ahead of Micah Parsons. All right. Enough of that. Let's get straight into this Tua conversation.
I've been asked this enough now that I figured it warranted time on the show. So I figured we'd do it here. The Saints quarterback situation has been, the singular biggest storyline this entire offseason in New Orleans. And that's saying something considering you have a new coach. The firing DA, hiring Kellen Moore thing has not been the driver. It's been Derek Carr's injury. Is he back? The contract restructure, and then ultimately drafting Tyler Shough before we even knew that Derek Carr was going to be retired. And this quarterback situation has been massive. And naturally, one of the things that I've talked a good bit about is the need to bring in a veteran. And my feeling, just to be very clear, is not that you need to bring in a veteran to make you better today, to help you compete now. Because I don't think this roster, even with an established veteran quarterback, is competing for anything of significance. They're not.
Okay, remember that point, because that's a very important point of why you should not entertain the idea of trading for Tua. Tua is on a 4-year, $215 million or something like that deal. So if you're not winning now, why would you trade for Tua? Why would you try and acquire him? Or let's just take Tua out of the equation. Why would you try and acquire or spend capital or spend money on any quarterback right now if you don't believe you're winning right now? If you like Aaron Rodgers, great example. Why would you invest whatever $15-20 million a year and waste time with Rodgers if you're not going to win now? Why would you trade for Tua? Why would you trade for name your quarterback? Like, guys, I hate to break it to you, but the Saints are walking into this season with Spencer Rattler, Tyler Shough, who they drafted 40th overall, and Hunter Deckers. Okay? That's what they're doing. And they're going to figure it out. And that's okay. It's risky, sure, because there's no backup plan. Because there's no, there kind of is a backup plan. Like, this veteran thing, it does make sense as far as like mentoring and letting quarterbacks learn from, like, in that area. Okay, fine, sure. But how much of that is really important? Like, how much of that is actually quantifiable to the point to where you have to add it? Is that idea really that important? Is Joe Flacco being big brother to Spencer Rattler and Tyler Shough, is that really that important that you need to move heaven and earth, move the roster, trade some capital, do what you got to do to make it happen? Or can you get the same thing out of some combination of Tolzien, Kellen Moore, and Doug Nussmeier quote unquote mentoring these guys. You know, like it is a talking point, but I think it's a talking point now to where it's like, we might be putting too much stock into this idea of a vet.
Not going to be a playoff team. Like, I think you could take Patrick Mahomes, put him on the Saints today. They're not a playoff team. You may roll.
That is absolutely insane. Patrick Mahomes on the, I mean, look, this is going to sound crazy. Patrick Mahomes on the Saints, they're probably not only a playoff team, they're probably like the 2 seed. I mean, that is nuts. Yeah, that part's crazy.
Roll your eyes at that. We saw Drew Brees in a Hall of Fame career have back-to-back 7 and 9 seasons. They're really good on offense. Defense was atrocious. I don't think.
Totally different game, completely different time, completely different era. Yeah, I mean, if you told me that Patrick Mahomes is going to play for the Saints and he's going to have the 32nd ranked defense, I mean, one of those 7 and 9 seasons, it was the most points given up by a defense in NFL history. It was the last Spags year. If you told me Patrick Mahomes was on the Saints and you told me the Saints had the 32nd defense, I still think Patrick Mahomes and that Saints team would win 9 games. It would be basically the Bengals last year.
The Saints have fixed all of their personnel issues that even with an elite quarterback would be a playoff team. My feeling has been they need to add a veteran as sort of a stabilizer to take pressure off of these young guys while they grow and learn and develop. And we've seen the benefits of that. We saw Patrick Mahomes get the opportunity to sit for a year behind Alex Smith before starting in his second year.
But like that's saying 2 different things. On one hand, it's like, all right, bring in a vet to just kind of hang out, be the big brother, show them the ropes, kind of walk them through the whole process. They learn, they grow, whatever. That's totally different than bringing a veteran to play for a year or 2 years and let them literally sit and develop. The mentor thing, I get. The bring in a vet to play, I don't get. We're too far beyond that. The vet's not in the building. He's not in the building, and he's not in free agency, and you don't trade to make that happen. You don't trade for Carson Wentz to start Carson Wentz and just rock and roll with Carson Wentz as your week 1 starter while these 2 guys sit. Like, you don't do that, right? So, same like Teddy Bridgewater. Like, you don't go get Teddy Bridgewater to have him start. Like, that's if you have the guy here, if Alex Smith was playing, yeah, sure. If Derek Carr was still here, yeah, play Carr. And they would have. Like, they would have played Derek for a year or half of the year or whatever, and then turned it over to Shough or Rattler or however it would have played out. Same with the Chiefs. Like, if Alex Smith wasn't already on the team and playing at a high level, I don't think they would have went and acquired Alex Smith or went and acquired a vet to then have them play. So I think that's 2 different situations with the veteran, and neither of the situations the Saints can really afford.
We saw Aaron Rodgers sit behind Brett Favre. Jordan Love sit behind Aaron Rodgers. I mean,
they're already there.
A methodology there that makes sense. So anyway, but my feeling there has been you can add a veteran quarterback in veteran free agency, someone like Teddy Bridgewater, or you wait to see what happens in Cleveland or New York, and there's probably going to be veteran quarterbacks who end up on the open market that you could bring in. What's been suggested is a dramatically different approach, and it's the possibility of trading for Tua. Now, to be very clear, I have not seen this from anyone reputable. It's not to say someone reputable hasn't reported on this. What I think has happened, as best as I can connect the dots, is somebody somewhere put out a hypothetical like the Saints should trade, like the Dolphins might be looking to move Tua, and so who naturally are the quarterback needy teams? The Saints are one of them. So someone follows that path and goes, okay, here's why the Saints should trade for Tua. I think that's how this happened. I don't think the Saints are calling Miami about Tua, and I don't know that Miami's out there shopping Tua around. Maybe they are. I just don't cover the Dolphins, and I don't know what internally is going on there.
So this is a danger with the current landscape of sports media, is that you can get beat reporters or content creators or whatever who float these ideas, and then one of these like websites who just kind of gathers, like Yahoo Sports does this. They'll just gather random stories from the different beat reporters and different whatever, and they'll just run them. And then another website, I almost just choked to death. Right there, I'm blasting through it. I was drowning. I was dry drowning right there. I don't know if y'all heard. Had the, it went down the wrong pipe or whatever. Dry drowning in the middle of the video. I didn't even think about stopping. Okay, that was crazy. That was nuts. What the hell was I talking about? And the stories. And then they just populate the stories, and all of a sudden it's like people think they're real because, oh wow, Yahoo Sports ran it, Times of India ran it, SportingNews.com ran it, Athlon Sports ran it. But then you read it and it's like, well, this has zero credibility at all. What I think happened was, I think some Dolphins content creators, beat reporters, whatever, they are floating the idea of trading Tua because I think Tua has underwhelmed, I guess, and he has the injury concerns. So this is like a story out of Miami, and then they're just placing Tua in random spots. Like, I did a little research on this when it was first brought up. I've seen Tua projected to be traded to the Vikings, projected to be traded to the Saints before the draft, before Derek Carr retired, projected to be traded to the Rams, projected to be traded to the Panthers. Like, it's all over the place. All right, so it's just, they're just throwing stuff at the wall, and the Saints are just one of the teams that are on the wall.
But I think there are two very different questions here. Number one is whether or not Tua is a better option than anyone you presently have. And to me, the answer to all of us should unequivocally be...
Okay, well, that's actually not the question. The question would be, is Tua so much better than anyone on the roster that he is 210, more than that, 200, let's call it 250. He is $215 million better than anyone on the roster. And then you start doing like the value, you try and extrapolate the value out and all that stuff. And the answer to that is no. I don't think he's $220 million better than Tyler Shough. I don't think the risk reward is worth the $210 million and draft capital or whatever capital you'd have to put into the trade. I don't think that's the case. In a vacuum, yeah, sure. If they're all just free and they're all just playing for $1 million, yeah, Tua is obviously would be the best quarterback in the room. But it's not the same, right? Like, I mean, it's kind of like saying, like, if I drive a Honda Accord and someone's like, well, ask yourself what's better, a Honda Accord or a Lamborghini? It's like, well, obviously the Lamborghini is better, but is it so much better? Is there so much value in it that I should leverage everything I own to and invest all this debt and whatever else to upgrade to the Lamborghini? And the answer to that is no. If they were the same cost, yeah, sure, I would drive the Lamborghini, right? But given all the other factors and variables, they aren't the same. And the value is actually with the Honda Accord in that situation.
Of course, Tua is a better option than anyone you have. Tua has played 5 NFL seasons, and he was 27 years old.
Yeah.
He's 38 and 24 as a starting quarterback in the NFL. His 2022 and 2023 seasons were actually outstanding.
Tua is, again, in a vacuum, Tua is good. And in a vacuum, it's like, yeah, Tua is a serviceable, good quarterback. Before his last concussion, Tua was kind of in that MVP, it was not seriously in the MVP discussion, but he was in the discussion of, like, this guy's lighting it up. Like, this guy is spinning the pill. Tua has some limitations physically, I think, even aside from the injuries. But yeah, before the injuries, Tua was good. And let me also say this. This is a sidebar. I've had a lot of people. So we just recently did the Tyler Shough highlight video where we broke down the film. I've had a lot of people say, like, well, go look at his Oregon stuff because he runs a lot more then. It's like, well, yeah, but that was before the leg injury. Like, you have to factor that stuff in, even if it's not a fact that the leg injury changed how he runs or whatever. Same with Tua, where it's like, oh, well, go watch Tua's first year. It's like, okay, well, that's before the concussions. Like, the whole red flag is the concussions. You can't go back. Like, I'll just make it up. If like Chris Olave all of a sudden drops contested catches by like 10%, you can't say, oh, well, just go watch his stuff at Ohio State. He was really good then. It's like, yeah, I know, but that was before all these concussions, which I'm correlating to the performance drop. right? So Tua's same thing. Yeah. First couple years in the NFL, when there's no tape on them, when there's no tape on the Miami offense, when all that's new before the concussions, yeah, but it's a completely different situation. You have to look at the situation now. And the risk now with Tua is that, one, he was not as good after the concussion, and two, he had the concussion. So not only are you investing capital to trade for him, not only are you investing $200 million into this guy, but now you also run the risk of, if he has another concussion, he could retire. All right? So if you are going to do this, if you are going to trade for and invest in a $200 million quarterback, Tua is the last person that you would want to do that with because of the injury risk.
And that's why he got the contract extension he did. In 2023, he started all 17 games, threw for 4,600 yards, 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and the Dolphins went 11-6. I mean, that's outstanding. I mean, that's what your expectation is when you take a guy with a top 10 pick at quarterback, which is what the Dolphins did with Tua back in 2020. So at his best, he's obviously a much better option than anyone you have, but I don't think that's the question. The other question is, should you trade for him?
Absolutely
and for me,
not.
The answer there is a resounding no.
Yeah, it's
and
insane.
I want to work through some reasons. I think there's 4 primary reasons why that's not a good idea. One is what I just mentioned. Your roster is not good enough to win now. If you are a quarterback away from being a contender, then I would say, hot damn, let's go. And you've seen situations like that. I mean, the 49ers had a great roster a couple of years ago. There was a stretch where I would argue the Niners had the best roster in the NFL.
Yeah, 2 years ago.
They're a quarterback away. And they kind of got lucky and drafted Brock Purdy. They went through a lot of different guys, thought maybe.
But the 49ers example is an example of why you wouldn't do it. The 49er example is, hey, spend your money and acquire talent all over the team and then get the cheap quarterback or get the, don't overspend on the quarterback position, because even if you don't luck up into Brock Purdy, then it's like, that's when you go get a guy on a 2-year, $50 million deal or whatever, and you just say, hey, win me. We got you for 2 years. Like, try and win. That's when you go get Matt Stafford, or you go get a player like that, or Geno or somebody, and put him on one of those, like I said, 2-3 year, $35, $40 million a year deals, and then you try and win and you walk on, you move on there. But in San Francisco's situation, they certainly couldn't have went and got a $200 million quarterback in Tua.
Jimmy G was the guy, but ultimately Jimmy G got him to a Super Bowl. Now they've paid Brock Purdy. Minnesota feels like one of those teams that's an elite quarterback away. Was Darnold that guy? Maybe. I mean, they won 14 games a year ago.
Darnold, exact same situation.
Maybe it's J.J. McCarthy. We'll see. But you can look at rosters at times and go, okay, what quarterback is elevating a good roster to be in a great team? Like
Stafford.
Joe Burrow is a great example of that.
Stafford's the best example. Stafford, that whole thing was the best example of, look, we're a quarterback away, go and get your guy, leverage the future, and then he does elevate you enough to where, Tom Brady's in Tampa, good example, where, with Jameis, they're a 500 team, and you could tell, like, there's talent on this team, there's talent on this roster. All we need is a good quarterback. And then Brady elevated that team, and they did what they did. So those are the examples of how you should operate when you're a quarterback away.
Joe Burrow statistically was the best quarterback in the NFL a year ago. He elevated a bad Bengals team to the brink of the playoffs because he had an all-pro caliber season. His roster, though, around him just isn't good enough. Then there's times where you have rosters that are good enough, they're missing the one piece. The Saints are neither of those. They're a bad roster with a bad quarterback situation. That's not my opinion. The odds makers, the people whose job is to set lines to make money. With Derek Carr, the Saints were projected 5.5 wins. Derek Carr retires, they're docked 1 win. They're down to 4.5 is their over-under projection. So that's to say, even with Derek Carr, they were at 5.5 wins. Let's say you replace Carr with Patrick Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, whoever you think is the best quarterback in the NFL. What's that player worth? Let's call it 4 wins. Okay, so you're a 8-9.
It's exactly what I said. Yeah, if Patrick Mahomes was on the Saints, it would push them up to that 9-ish win territory, even with the worst defense in the NFL, which we don't have. Saying it's good or bad, like the roster and all that, I think is it doesn't explain the situation. What's more important is that this is a team and a roster that is downshifting contracts, aging players, all of that. They are not attempting to win now. We've seen the Marshawn Lattimore trade. We've seen how they're handling some of these contracts. This is a team that is clearing all that debt. It's clearing all the older players, and it's shifting into this new era. All right? Whether you think the roster is bad or good in the meantime, it doesn't really matter, because none of that downshifting, none of that shedding bad contracts, none of that getting younger, acquiring draft picks, none of that equates to trade capital, trade draft picks, and take on the biggest contract in franchise history. Like the philosophical difference there is obvious, whether you think the roster is good or bad. So that's the reason why you don't do this trade. Nothing to do with like, well, this roster sucks, or whatever, because he just explained if the player is good enough, like Joe Burrow. Like if this was Joe Burrow, yeah, you probably make the trade. Because it makes your franchise that much better, and the risk isn't there like it is with Tua, and the concussions aren't there, and the play is so much better. Like Burrow is so much better than Tua. The money is about the same, like whatever. So it's not about like adding the player to a bad roster. It's more about just the philosophical difference. If you add Joe Burrow, you are changing your philosophical approach because he is so good. All of a sudden, then it's like, okay, well now we're trying to win, and we have a quarterback who can make us do that. Tua doesn't change the philosophical approach, doesn't change the outlook. All you're doing is spending a bunch of money for no reason.
9-18. I mean, you're still not a contender. You're better, but you're not a contender. So that's number one.
Patrick Mahomes, you absolutely are.
You're not a quarterback away. Number two is an obvious one, which are the injury concerns with Tua.
Okay, let me back up too. The Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes thing, every team is a quarterback away. Like, don't get that mistaken. Every single team is a quarterback away. Otherwise, the Titans would have taken Abdul Carter. Right? The whole goal is to get the quarterback. Now, there's a lot of other variabilities of the money, the injuries, like all of that, how good they actually are, whatever. If you can acquire Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, you do. Congratulations, you are now a contender. Every single team in the NFL is a quarterback away. So that is a bit of a misnomer as well, saying like, well, you're not a quarterback away. Because, again, if the Titans aren't a quarterback away, which they aren't, and you say, okay, well, I'm not taking Cam Ward, I'll take Abdul Carter. Well, you aren't a defensive end away either, right? So it's kind of one of those turns of phrases that doesn't really mean much. It's more about the actual quarterback, the actual value, the actual monies, the actual contract, all of that. There is a real difference in players. There's a real difference in acquiring Geno Smith and acquiring Joe Burrow. There's a difference in acquiring Derek Carr and acquiring Josh Allen. So sometimes that statement, it sounds good, but it also at the same time it's like, well, it's actually, it's not really true. You are a quarterback away. Every team can say that.
In 5 seasons, he's played a full lot of games once, and that was 2023. As a rookie, he played in 10 games. In 2021, he played in 13. 2022, he played in 13. In 2023, he played the full 17-game season, and then this last year, he missed 6 games. So that's just part of the narrative or the conversation with Tua. He has missed games every season but one. So
he's also missing them for the worst reason possible, which is devastating head injuries. Like, we have seen Tua multiple times get concussed to where he is doing the fencing response on the field. This is not, he's banging up his shoulder. This is not, his ankles are weak. This is not, he's got a elbow tendonitis. This is, he's fencing on the field. Like, he is straight up knocked unconscious, getting stretchered off. And when you are dealing with head injuries and you're dealing with concussions and all that, it's not to say that he is susceptible to concussions, which I think, I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure once you have a concussion, you are more susceptible to have the next one. But it's not to say that he's always going to have them. It's more saying that he is playing a sport where very likely you will have head injuries, or very likely that the situation will arise that would create a head injury, and his next head injury could be the one that makes him retire because of what we've seen in the past. That's the problem with Tua.
So at 27 years old, with real legitimate concussion issues, can you invest long-term in Tua?
Obviously
it's a very
not.
difficult thing to do with confidence because you just don't know if that guy is going to have durability to warrant the type of contract that Miami already gave him with their extension.
Not to mention what offense will be running. What do you know Kellen Moore wants to do? RPO. He wants to do, I don't want to say tush push, but he wants to do things like that we saw in Philly. All right? He's not going to be asking Tyler Shough or Spencer Rattler to be doing what Jalen Hurts was doing, but we do know that the RPO and all that is going to be a part of this offense. Again, Tua is the worst possible quarterback to do this. Tua is in a system that is very much quick reads, efficient routes, get the ball out of your hands, as West Coast gets, right? He is not the guy you want to be doing RPOs, tush pushes, running around. That is not how he needs to operate.
Which is the third. So after the fact that you're not a quarterback away, Tua's got injury concerns, there's the cost. Miami gave Tua a 4-year, $212 million contract.
It makes like $53 million a year.
That runs through 2029.
I want to say he's like the 4th or 5th highest paid quarterback in the NFL.
So, remember I say it all the time, when you trade for a player, and usually it's the other way, because we're talking about it from the Saints, when people are like, oh, the Saints should trade their veteran players. That sounds great. But when you're trading, remember, you're not just trading the player or trading for the player, you're trading for the player's contract as well. So when you look at Tua, if you trade for Tua with the contract that Miami gave him, they signed him to a 4-year, $212 million deal that has an average annual value of $53 million. Like, that's a giant problem. I mean, that's the kind of contract that you're going to give the top quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, you take on that kind of burden for Lamar Jackson, for Josh Allen, for Joe Burrow, for Patrick Mahomes. You don't take on that burden for Tua when he is 27 with a concussion history that is a concern about his longevity, and in 5 seasons he's played a full year once.
And he's also not that good. Like, he's not even close to Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick. You're talking about a guy who, if we're grading on a curve, he's like the 15th, 16th, 17th quarterback in the NFL. Like, this is not a guy who's like, oh yeah, this guy is absolutely launching your franchise into the next stratosphere. He hasn't even done that with Miami, right? So, like, this whole thing, I understand that it is May. I understand that we're in the dog days of summer. I understand that, hey, look, we got to find something to talk about. But this is as much of a non-starter as it gets. This is as much of a, nah. Like, how is this? No. 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 This makes zero sense. There is not a single positive to this. There is not a single reason to do this. There is nothing but red flags. There is nothing but negatives. There is nothing but no's. I could find 100 reasons not to do this. I can't find a single one to entertain this.
So that's the other part. And then finally, remember, it's not just taking on the player and his contract. You have to give up assets to get that player.
Hey, you're trading for it.
So all of the and if you just look at what trade compensation might look like, here's Here's 4 trades that I looked up in the last 15 years that are similar, where you're trading for an established veteran quarterback. For whatever reason, things went awry, and the team that had that player's rights traded him. 2009, Josh McDaniels went to Denver as the head coach, and he trades Jay Cutler to Chicago. It's a pretty good comp. Jay Cutler was a first-round pick. He was an established starter. It was 2 first-round picks, a 3, and Kyle Orton. Chicago sent Denver 2 1s, a 3, and their starting quarterback. If you're New Orleans, would you send Miami 2 1s, a 3, and a starter?
Can you imagine? Like, when I heard that, I have goosebumps. I actually have goosebumps when I heard that. I mean, if he says yes, my eyeballs might roll out of the studio.
I wouldn't.
Oh, thank God.
Cincinnati traded Carson Palmer to Oakland. Remember, Palmer said he'd retire if he didn't get traded out of Cincinnati. Joke's on you. They sent you to Oakland. They got a 1 and a 2. Oakland gave up a 1 and a 2 for Carson Palmer. You want to give up a first and a second round pick for Tua? I wouldn't. Not to turn around and have to spend $53 million a year on a 27-year-old quarterback who's played a full season once and has concussion history. Miami did it in 2019 with Ryan Tannehill. Remember, Ryan Tannehill was a top 10 pick in the draft. They traded him to Tennessee. This one was palatable. They sent him to Tennessee for a 4 and a 7. So the Titans gave up a 4th-round pick and a 7th-round pick for Ryan Tannehill. That's palatable. If you told me the Saints could send Miami a 4 and a 7 and get Tua, now you've got my attention. I also don't think that's realistic. And most recently, we saw it with Matt Stafford. Detroit traded Stafford to L.A. for 2 1s, a 3, and Jared Goff. Basically, L.A. was willing to send Goff and all the picks to Detroit to take Goff's contract. Remember, L.A. gave Goff the giant contract after they went to the Super Bowl in 2018, but they didn't feel like he was capable of being an elite quarterback. So really that trade was like, hey, we'll give you 2 1s and a 3 to take Goff's contract off our hands and give us the veteran quarterback who we think we can win now with. And it's worked for both teams. Goff has become a legitimate starter.
Goff is so much better than Tua. So much, just a ridiculously amount. He's better than Tua.
In the NFL, and Stafford won a Super Bowl. So that's worked. But would you give up 2 1s, a 3, and a player for Tua? Of course you would.
Hell no.
So as I look through it, the only thing that would be palatable is if Miami would take the Tannehill deal. Would you?
Yeah, and he didn't have the contract. I would not do a 4th and a 7th for Tua because I'm not taking on that contract, and there's no reason to do it. And you took Tyler Shough 40th overall. So you're basically just punting the 40th overall pick. So it's really a 4th, a 7th, a 2nd, and you're in getting the $210 million contract. Absolutely not.
Did you take a 4 and a 7 to get rid of Tua's contract, basically, and start over there in Miami? I don't know that they're willing to do that, but that's about the only thing that I'd be willing to do. And if that's off the table, then I don't know that there's a realistic option. And again, if you missed it as we started this conversation, there's no credible reports out there that this is happening, but I've been asked about this enough by you all that I felt it warranted having the conversation. Your roster's not good enough to win now. Tua's got injury concerns. There's an exorbitant cost associated, and you'd have to send tons of draft capital to Miami. It just doesn't make sense.
Oh, and Tua's not that good.
Oh, by the way, you also just spent the 40th overall pick on a quarterback. So you're going to go through this year, assess what you have with Tyler Shough, Spencer Rattler, and after this season, you have a pretty good idea if you feel like you can build around one of those two guys. And if you can, awesome. You commit resources to building around those two guys. And if after the 2025 season, you look at what you have in Rattler,
hey, just draft another one.
This is not going to be it.
Yeah, whatever.
Then you pivot. And you use a top 10 pick on a quarterback for the first time since Archie Manning, and you build around that player. See how it goes. But pretty confident saying it won't be a trade for Tua.
No, it will not. And this is not a thing. You have no reason to think it's a thing. It's not a thing. So don't worry about it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Hey, by the way, May 28th, Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central, I will be joining the Trizzy Trace, over on the Saints Now YouTube channel. So it's going to be a ton of fun. I can't wait. Full-on interview, chat's going to be popping off. I'm going to be putting on a show. The last time we did one of these collabs was with TJ. And y'all showed up big time. Y'all flooded the chat. It was a blast. Tons of fun over there. So excited to do this. So boom. What did I say? May 28th, 6 Central. Boom. The face of the franchise invades that channel. All right. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your Thursday. Friday's Eve, as some would say. And I will see you in the next video.